Greetings YouTube, Alan Liu back with another video. It actually has been a little while this time. Um, I don't know, maybe it's been like 10 days since I made a video. But, recently went to the Pro Tour in LA. Didn't really have time to make videos because of it. And I wasn't really focusing on making content over, the weekend because I really wanted to, prepare, test, and try to do well and focus on the tournament. But unfortunately, if you saw my tweet, didn't really go as planned. I brought Bravo to the tournament because, well, to put it simply, I'm a Bravo player. And while the deck more or less performed, I guess, as expected, as a lot of people would say, it's definitely just a little bit demoralizing seeing how the meta is turning out. And ultimately, just seeing that Bravo is probably in what I feel is like the worst spot in a long time. But I can talk about that later. But I just wanted to do one little deck tech. Nothing has really changed, honestly, since like my last, or maybe only like 3 or 4 cards have changed since like my last RTN deck list or things like that. And if you're up to date on my Patreon, you can see all the changes that I was going through at the time. But this will probably be, as the video states, one of my last Bravo deck techs because I don't know, even if I win an upcoming Pro Quest or like a Pro Quest or PTI or whatever event on Bravo, I'm pretty sure if I brought him, the deck would be like 95% the same. So don't really have a reason to make another video on it. I know a lot of you are here for my Bravo content, which makes me happy, but I think for now I probably won't make another deck tech video with Bravo unless I happen to top a calling or somehow, manage to win Amsterdam or something like that. But with the way the metagame's turning out, it's seeming less and less likely. So might be looking onto different ventures moving forward, or might need to retool my thoughts on the deck as a whole to see, how I feel like Bravo can potentially compete in the upcoming metagame. I'll definitely still play Bravo, at least in like one of the upcoming Pro Quests, but definitely will be trying out some other things, maybe go back, revisit Fi or Katsu, or, hop on the Hatchet Dory train, things like that. But yeah, I just wanted to go over the deck just really quickly and then mainly go over like my Pro Tour recap. Um, of the cards, things are mostly the same. I actually went down to 39 blue instead of 40 just because I wanted one extra slot in my sideboard. And, I decided to take the two block out muscle, for Dromai and Kano. And if it becomes unfortunate in other matchups, it is what it is. But yeah, so that's mostly the same. All this is mostly the same. I used to run 2 Chokeslam, 2 Debilitate, but after realizing that in a lot of Warrior matchups, I can just run 2 Zealous Beltings, I put Chokeslam back to 3 and saved a slot there. Still the same old Fate Foreseen. Pulverize, I went back down to 2. 3 is just too much, honestly. You want to find it early, and if you find it too late, then it just kind of clunks your arsenal, and you won't be able to do anything if you're just like in an endgame situation where you need to keep trading like 2 cards back and forth. Pummel sigils are mostly the same. Sink below, Spinal Zealous. Equipment is the same, and I added Spellfray Cloak. That was like the one extra sideboard slot I wanted. Against Kano, assuming the deck is doing what I want it to do, which is to pressure damage, not necessarily disrupt. I'm trying to not, or unless CNC Pummel, I can disrupt them, obviously, right? But Spellfray Cloak is nice because even with Tectonic, you don't often really need the Surge that often. Obviously, playing Crippling off of 2 cards when you have a Surge up is a better rate than dominating and potentially dying or things like that. But at least I found that, if the deck is going as intended and you're outputting pressure, the Spellfray Cloak usually helps you survive if you need to tap out to go for game or something, and the Kano needs to, go off the top blindly instead of stacking. But in testing, it worked out pretty well, but in my one Kano match at the Pro Tour, it honestly didn't really matter which chess piece I had, unfortunately. But so yeah, that's mostly the list. It's mostly the same. And if you might not know, but in the bin, this is a little inside joke, I guess, between Warrison, who doesn't play Flesh and Blood unfortunately anymore, but he was on the team or on Stroop Waffle. I want to say like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It was U.S. Nationals 2022 in Charlotte, and I brought Bravo, and that was like right after Uprising when Fi and Oldham and Icelander and those decks were all the hype. And I told the team, I'm bringing Bravo because I'm a Bravo player. And then Warrison would always be like, "Bravo is so cope. He's in the bin." And after that event, after not doing well, after losing to the Oldhams, I was like, "Yep, he's in the bin." But I kept playing with him anyways, and I found more success, and the meta changed and things like that. But I guess how I'm feeling right now after the PT is that he is maybe once again in the bin. But I'll still give it a go. I have some thoughts on things I could change for the different meta, but for now, he's mostly just gonna stay here, I guess. All right, going through the recap. So round 1, I played a KO, and I was able to win. So KO was the most represented deck at the Pro Tour, if looking at this picture. And I didn't have a great matchup into KO. Let's just say that, but it was at least winnable, and that's kind of how I felt at least against Lexi during the Lexi meta. But the big difference in the Lexi meta is that if my deck is high rolling, I can be confident that Lexi is not on D-Reacts. They're not on like Reinforce or whatever. So whenever I go for a dominate play, if I count their armor and a 3-block from hand, I can safely make certain plays to hopefully win the game. When it comes to KO, it's much more difficult. KO sometimes will also cast bones and go for a setup turn rather than attack me, and that often can strand cards in your hand, whereas Lexi was very often just nonstop, at least attacking you with 1 arrow a turn. Like if Lexi's not attacking you, it's because you played Warmongers or something. But fortunately, in my round 1, I was able to kind of just high roll. I went first. I was able to Showtime heave the Pulverize, and then on my next turn, I was able to route. Or no, I was able to. He played Swing Big, and I put all 8 armor in front of it, and I got the Quicken. I drew a card from Showtime, and I had 5 blues in hand. I pulverized with 3 blues. Well, actually, no. I didn't heave the Pulverize. I only made a Surge, and I Showtimed for it, because I think my hand maybe had like a yellow or a red or something, but I filtered it away with Bravo's ability and or overpitching or something. So I was able to go, Pulverize non-dominated. He committed his Fleshbag there, which is, probably a fine read because I didn't dominate the Pulverize. Like if I had drew a red and I was worried about Fleshbag, I could have just dominated the Pulverized arsenal of a red. But since I had 2 cards left in hand, maybe he has a read that like I want to swing the hammer, but maybe I have a red, so I didn't dominate it. Maybe it goes for the 50-50 on the Fleshbag, but I had 2 blues, so I was able to get the hammer in for 6, and I got ahead from there and just mainly closed it out. My deck, kept drawing good, efficient red hands, some spinals, some disruption, pummels I could safely play once Fleshbag was committed. So that fortunately went my way. Feeling pretty good. And then round 2, let's see, I played a Kano, and I lost this one. So this Kano was on the, Sinks, Fades, Oasis, defend, and stack your, double Wildfire, double Blazing combo towards the end. And, that's a good plan into Bravo. And unfortunately, my deck just didn't really draw very well. I don't want to blame it on variance or anything. Like, I think he played very well. But it was one of those games where looking back, I didn't really tilt from it per se, because it just felt like I don't really think I made any mistakes. Just kind of the way it's a tough matchup, and if the cards don't line up right, then you don't really have a shot. Like a lot of my turns were like swing cranial for 8, or swing just a Macho Grande for 8 dominate, and or just like draw two reds and like play CNC with no pummels. And by the time I drew my first pummel, he was already at his stack. So that was pretty unfortunate, but I've 1-1. It's not the end of the world. I can definitely come back. Round 3, I played a Kasai. This one, I'm not too worried about Kasai as Bravo. I think that Hatchet Dorinthia is way scarier and borderline unwinnable for Bravo, at least the current iteration that I had built. I didn't really expect Hatchet Dory to come out that much at this Pro Tour, because like I had tinkered with the deck before. Like I made the video on the deck, but I didn't really put any time into it because I was just like, I don't really want to figure out the Draw My matchup. I'll just maybe try to pick up the deck after Draw My LLs or something. But at the Battle Hardened in Germany, you saw 2 Hatchet Dories top 8. You saw the Hatchet Kasai win the whole thing, beating a Dromai. But I didn't really hear anybody talk about the deck, but like it was definitely on everyone's radar, and obviously a lot of people brought it. So the difference between Kasai and Dory is that like Kasai's power cards like Blood on Her Hands and Cash In and things like that require you to hit and sort of set up your grave and get your copper from spoils first or Outland Skirmish, whereas Dorinthia is just like above rate every single turn for the most part. And she doesn't have maybe the same explosivity as Kasai with like 12 copper or something, but she doesn't really need that when she's not behind for most of the game. When I play against Kasai as Bravo, at least they can have quad red hands, or like their yellows and blues line up, and sometimes their turns are just pretty under rate where I can just slowly, not slowly, but like play efficient turns and go for disruption, go for pummels, and get it. In this game, my opponent definitely had some bad luck. He drew a lot of 4 red hands, and because of that, I was able to like pretty comfortably close out the game, just with efficient turn cycles and things like that. So I'm feeling good at this point. 2-1, not the end of the world. And then I played a Bolton and I lost. This one was pretty unfortunate because Bolton in general, it was on Raiden Bolton, and I think I sideboarded a little wrong, but let's just I kind of wanted to hedge in case he was playing Sabers, but I should have known that a good Bolton player would play Raiden into Bravo. At least that's my expectation. I don't think Sabers into Bravo is a very good idea. But I didn't want to sort of count on my opponent playing a certain way, especially at the Pro Tour. You never know what people are testing or doing. But in this game specifically, the Bolton player's deck definitely had some clunky hands, and I guess that's bound to happen when we like cycled through our entire decks. Like by the time the game ended, he had 5-ish cards left in total, but one of those cards was a beacon. I didn't have any D-reacts, so I couldn't close out the game, and I couldn't block because he can just beacon for like 8 or whatever. And I think I made like a pretty crucial misplay towards the end where it was his last Lumina, it was his second swing, and I committed my Crown of Providence to stopping the on hit because we were both in single digit life, and I didn't want him to gain a life because even 1 life is a huge deal when you're trying to dominate and go for game as Bravo. And I had arsenaled a Pulverize with a Surge up, and my next hand was 2 reds, 2 blues, and because of that, I wasn't able to play the Pulverize, and that clunked my arsenal, and his D-reacts were coming up. I think if I had saved Crown there and I had fished for another blue and been able to play the Pulverize, arsenal, a pummel or something, that would have been great. But unfortunately, the pummels were at the bottom of my deck, and pummel is really a card that you kind of want to see in like the first half of the game, so you can like get them on the back foot, maybe get a little bit of a life lead, and like use Dominate to close out the game. But unfortunately, by the time I drew into pummel, we were already like in our second cycle. He drew back into his soul shield that he pitched, was able to cover up my spinal pummel, and then it just got to the beacon point and I lost there. So I was pretty not tilted per se, but I was definitely disappointed at that play because I felt like that was a game I could have won. Not to say that I should have won. My opponent should have won and he did because he played better than I did. Even though his deck, drew arguably worse, I would say. But I mean, not a favored matchup, but I could have gone away with it maybe. But, it is what it is. And then round 5, we're looking at the draft, and I draft Victor. So my pack 1 pick 1 is a test of strength. And looking at pack 2, I see a single Guardian card or a solo Guardian card, like not the hybrid cards. And I think it was a red Thunk. And I was like, that's pretty good. So, I have the test of strength. I have the Thunk. I draft that to signal to my left. And pick 3, I see another test of strength. So the 2 players to my right likely aren't, flexing towards Guardian. That's great. I picked the test of strength. And, I'm picking. This first pack feels pretty good. Towards the end of the pack, the wheels aren't amazing. I'm kind of getting the feeling that it's a 3 Guardian pod by the end of pack 1, but there wasn't really too much I could do about it because I kind of, slammed it by pack 3 or by pick 2 and 3. And then when I look at pack 2, I was like, oh my goodness. There are more people to my left that are drafting Guardian. I don't know. Actually, was there even one Guardian only card in the second pick? I wanted to say that I tried to signal, but maybe I failed. I'm not sure. Either way, regardless of what happened, pack 2 was terrible. I saw Guardian cards getting cut, going right. And, pack 3 can definitely save the deck, but it was looking pretty unfortunate at that point. I think towards the end, by the end of this draft, I was pretty worried because my deck had 8 blues, and I definitely want more blues than 8 in a Guardian deck. There was a ton of yellows, and my 3 blocks were maybe just like slightly under 20 when I had maybe slightly only over 30 playables. So it wasn't a great Victor deck, but somehow I managed to 2-1 with it. I don't even remember what my matchups are. I think I played Kasai in round 5 and I won that one. I think in general when I draft Guardian and heavy hitters, I'm not too worried about the Warriors, because all of the non-attacks that kind of wheel around are efficient blocks and you can just smack them. My test of strength keeps drawing me gold. Excuse me, things like that. But the pod density ended up being 3 Guardian, 3 Warrior, and then 1 KO, 1 Reinar. So that was pretty unfortunate. I saw that's right. I saw towards the end of pack 1 that Brute was kind of open, but I didn't really flex into Brute and Guardian. I went for more so of the strong, Guardian 3 blocks and things like that. So round 6, I play the KO and I lose because his deck is insane. He has like 1 miss in the entire deck, and he also had cast bones. And I think I took that loss in stride. Like, I was talking with the guy, we were having a good time. I did not expect to win at all, and I was like, okay, my deck's only win condition here as Victor is to try and fatigue him, and that was pretty impossible. I went first. I had the. It's funny. I had the chess piece that blocks for 2 when your opponent cracks a vigor, but obviously he's Brute. He doesn't make vigors. But on my turn 1, I wage vigor. He fully blocks it and makes the vigor. And then on his turn, he goes claw for 3, and I'm expecting, an agile windup or a mighty windup. And I was like, my hand is test of strength, a 3 block, and something else. And it's awkward because if I commit the test of strength now, maybe he comes in with a bigger attack next. Or if I commit the 3 block and he doesn't attack, then I lose. I'm stranded with test of strength. And the one turn where he does have a vigor pop, I didn't get value on my chess piece. But I ended up going for the 3 block. And he goes, discard Mighty Windup, makes 2 mites, cast bones, reveals 6, makes 6 more mites, agility, arsenal pass. And I'm like, this is really bad. I think my turn is like hammer or hit something or throw 6 or something. I didn't get my chest to pop vigor. And then he comes at me with like Bear Fangs for 16 or something. And then yeah, I was kind of doomed from there, but it was a fun time. There was one other turn where I blocked with the 1 Clash of Vigor in my deck, and I was like, please just let him win this clash so I can get 2 life from my chess piece. I did not win that clash, and then no, I did win that clash, so I made the Vigor, but I was blocking out at that point, so it didn't matter. And then my test of strength, he wins and he gets a gold, but it is what it is. Going into that game, I definitely expected to lose, and that's what happened. So I think round 3 I played another Kasai. I want to say I played another Warrior. I don't recall playing a Guardian Mirror in that pod. And I think my deck was pretty fine. Yes, I did play into Kasai. And this game was extremely close. It got down to the wire. We went to fatigue. We were both at like 1-1. And it got to the point where he comes in with an attack for 6, like some wage card. Or don't remember. It's a warrior attack that's coming in for 6. And he has 1 card in hand, 1 card in arsenal. And I'm thinking about the, a possible attack react from arsenal. And I did the math between how many decks we had in each of our, or how many cards we had in each of our decks. And if I overblock there with 3 cards, I actually lose because I need to block out completely and I lose cards in my deck. So I have to block 6. Luckily, he doesn't have the react. It was in his next hand and it wasn't in arsenal. And then I was able to deck him out and I got it from there. Extremely close game. And I end up day 1, 4-3. Made it to day 2. And, I think let me make this a little smaller. I think some people, at this point considered like, should I drop and play the calling? 4-3 is not amazing. But this was the first Pro Tour I attended. And I was like, I'm here to play the Pro Tour and I'm just going to go for it. Maybe there's a chance I win out and get like top 16. That would be amazing. But realistically, I'm shooting for top 64, and I'm just going to, just go for it. So day 2, unfortunately, my draft was absolutely awful. So I drafted KO. And I was in 1 of 4 Brute pod. And it was 3 Guardian, 1 Warrior. And so, looking back at this pod, I definitely should have pivoted to Warrior. My pick one, I think, was like Clash of Agility. So I was already flexing between Brute and Warrior. And I think around pick 7, I saw a Beckon Applause. And I was like, this is pretty late for a Beckon Applause to come around. Like, I don't think people like really prioritize the 2 temper blocks compared to like Gauntlet of Might or like or like Flat Trackers. But seeing it that late was quite surprising. And also at that point, there was no other brute cards or no other playable cards that I could have even played in that pack. So I ended up picking the Beck and Applause anyways. At that point, I should have realized that Warrior was open and pivoted into Warrior. But I was like, you know what? I signaled hard to my left that I'm brute, so I'll just slam more brute cards. And it was just an awful idea. My deck was terrible. It had like 6 no blocks, blues or something. I had a cracked bauble, and it was just absolutely terrible. Round 8, what did I play? I'm trying to. What did I play? Did I play a Guardian? No, I played a KO Mirror. This was actually against Mark, the guy who I believe got second at calling Hartford, I want to say. Yeah. Once again, it was a friendly game. I lost it because his deck had way better, 3 blocks, and in a 4 brute pod where all of us are KO and or actually no, there was 1 Rhinar, and all of our decks are pretty mid to bad. The deck that can block better probably gets there, and that's basically what happened. It wasn't even close. I got destroyed. But I was kind of expecting that, but it is what it is. And then round 9, I got a bye, so that's pretty good. One of the brute players actually dropped after drafting, which is maybe what I could have done, and gone to play the calling. But I was like, you know what? It's KO. I have some wild rides. Maybe I high roll. Maybe I even get like 2 wins, and I see what happens from there. Round 10, I play Betsy, and I lose, unfortunately. It was a pretty close game for most of the game, but by the time we were getting to like 2nd/3rd cycle, I was just drawing into like blue wild rides, blue bear fangs, and I was like, and my crack bubble, and I was like, this is absolutely awful. And I just got, fatigued by damage slash blocking, basically. Like he would just, block 6, 2 card 7, and unfortunately my deck was not good enough to beat that. I think I played the matchup well. He's a NorCal player as well, so that was cool. But yeah, at this point, I am 1-2 for the day. I'm 5-5, and I'm like, okay. It's very unlikely at this point that I even top 64, but at this point, I was like, you know what? I came here to play the Pro Tour. I'm going to play the Pro Tour. And then round 11, I play a Levia, and I lose this one. And after this one, my mental just boomed, and I decided to drop because my opponent was like, yeah, I rolled pretty hard that game. And I was like, yeah, I believe I went first. My hand was pretty bad. The best I could do was maybe like tear asunder Arsenal a card or something. And his turn is like Blood Rush, or no, was it immediately that he goes Blood Rush, or was it the turn after? But basically he goes Blood Rush, roll Scabs, hits a 4, goes Claw. No, he goes Shadow of Blasmaphet, discards the yellow tree card, put it instant banish, plays the tree, and then plays Boneyard Marauder from Arsenal. And when he drew discard from Shadow of Blasmaphet, I discarded the red instead of the blue. And so that gave him another attack to get through. And I was like, wow, I am getting dumpstered so far. I tried to keep it competitive. At some point, the life is like maybe around 10-10. I don't remember the exact life, but it was around there. But he had a full tempo, so I needed him to brick to have any chance. And unfortunately, he didn't brick. Towards the end of the game, I didn't find a good point to use my Civic Steps, so I needed to cash it in. He has another Blood Rush turn. He attacks, used both of his claws. He has 2 cards left in hand, 2 resources floating, and I'm like, okay, on this second claw, I'm going to use my Civic Steps. I'm pretty sure he can only play 1 attack, unless he has like exactly Shadowpeed, Boneyard Marauder, or Boneyard Marauder, right? So then he goes CNC go again, none floating, 1 card in hand, and I'm like, okay, I can block this. And then he goes Doomsday, attacks me for 6, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like the 1 card, not the 1 card that's a punish. There was other punishes, like I mentioned, like Boneyard, or Boneyard Slitherpede, and I was like, wow, this game is really not going my way. And my opponent played well. That's just kind of Levia things. She has really high ceilings and sometimes a very low floor. And unfortunately, after that game, I was just like, I'm just going to drop. It is what it is. I went back to the hotel, took a little nap, decided to play some side events, and just have a good time for the rest of the weekend. But that was basically my Pro Tour experience. Looking back, do I think Bravo was a bad pick? Yes, but at the same time, I didn't think that it would be that awful per se. Like, for example, KO is a bad matchup, but it's still winnable. Even though my testing experience is probably like 20% or something, like it's still winnable. I tried a bunch of different things. I was like, okay, I have a game plan. Let's go for it. And, the 1 KO I did play was a win. Dromai is probably the matchup in the entire game that I have the most experience into, outside of like Starvo Prism, maybe, because I played that matchup a lot. But so I felt like Dromai was probably going to be like second represented, which she was. And if I ever played into a Dromai, I was pretty comfortable that I could win. Even though, people say it's a 90-90, I think like experience is a huge factor. And I also think that, Dromais in general aren't teching for Bravo anymore. They're not playing as many remembrances. They're playing more redline attacks to be other Dromais and stuff like that. And that makes me feel more favored. So I thought that was a good matchup for me. Dorinthia, if there were hatchets, which was kind of new and up and coming, I didn't expect too many to show up, but they did, and they all did quite well. Hatchets is probably unwinnable. Dawnblade is fine. It's like a very skill testing matchup on both sides. Not too worried there. Victor, I think most people would agree it's Bravo favored, but Victor has a better time into KO and other decks in the meta, and also Dorinthia. Azalea, good matchup. Dash, I think, is a good matchup. No one's on Slab or Treefog Dash anymore. They're on like an aggro boost plan or a hybrid plan, and for those decks, I think Bravo does fine. Katsu, fine matchup. Leviah can be tough. Kano can be tough. Kasai, I think, is mostly fine also. Prism, I think, is also a fine matchup, actually, after playing it more as Bravo. Reinhardt can be a little tough sometimes because they also have, high roll and high roll potential with Blood Rush and Intimidate and things like that. Bolton can be a little tough, and then most of the all the other matchups are mostly fine. So in general, I didn't think Bravo was like an awful pick per se, but seeing how this current meta is, and once Dromai LLs, she's definitely gonna win at least 2 Pro Quests this coming or the first weekend, so she'll be gone after that. And once Dromai is gone, it really does feel like one of the biggest reasons to play Bravo is gone, at least for me, because I think the Dromai matchup is one of my best matchups. Maybe not as a Bravo per se, but more on like a personal level in terms of how much testing I've done into that matchup. And everyone's on the Dorinthia Hatchet hype train now, and that is probably honestly unwinnable. At least for the current deck. I talked about that a little bit. Victor might show up a little more. Maybe even Teklo shows up a little more because Dromai's gone. Kano is still tough, but like it's doable. It is what it is, right? But yeah, so KO was already tough, and with Dromai gone, KO and Dorinthia are kind of like the new de facto like big bads of the format that everyone's gonna try to like target in some way. Like KO is a deck that has a ton of value mainly through attacking, and he has a giant armor suite that Bravo can't get through. Dorinthia has a ton of value with her hatchets and blocks very well, has a ton of armor. So both of those matchups are pretty bad for Bravo because you can't outvalue decks unless you're hitting them with effects like Pulverize or Crippling Crush or Spinal, Disable, Pummel, CNC, things like that. And, if those crush effects aren't hitting, you're basically playing underrate the entire game. And for most games, that just leads to a very bad matchup. So unfortunately, I didn't really run into matchups that I thought were really great for me. Like KO wasn't great. Kano's not great. Kasai is a fine one. Bolton's not great. Leviah's not great. Really wish I played like some Dromais or some Victors or Azaleas or Dash, Katsu, etc. But, it is what it is. I'm not going to blame it on Gem. I especially think like I could have played better in a lot of my games. The Bolton game, I could have played better. I'm not saying that I should have won the game or that I would have won the game if I had made different decisions, but I do identify mistakes in that game. So it's something to look back on and improve, right? And then the second draft, I honestly boomed that. I think my mindset going into that draft was, I'm 4-3. I wanted to go for it. And I was just like, let's slam KO and see if I can get there. And that was a bad idea, even though in pack 1, I saw Guardian getting cut from the right, and I was like, okay, KO seems pretty open. By the time it came all the way back around, I was like, oh no, KO is very not open. So it is what it is, right? I definitely think I can improve, and there's a lot to learn from this event. The quality of the players was amazing, and you don't get to play these high stakes games a lot, and it was just a great experience just meeting up with friends, testing, staying at the hotel, getting dinners, things like that. So overall, great experience. 10 out of 10 would recommend. I also met a lot of people. Like, I met Justin Koo, great guy, amazing player. I met some of the other members on the team Unbox as well. I met this one guy from Chicago, and we were talking about like Bravo's place in the meta, and he was like the one who like, I was like, yeah, you're right, Bravo's pretty bad. No, I'm just kidding. Bravo's obviously not in a great spot. I don't think he's bad per se, but he's definitely not great. And then, I just met a lot of people. People came up, said hi to me. and it's weird. It's definitely weird because I'm not used to it. But please say hi if you ever see me at an event. I'm down to talk for the most part, unless I'm having a terrible day, which unfortunately day 2 after I dropped, I definitely was. But afterwards, I came back, reset, decided to have a good time, and so yeah, that was kind of it. Plans. I'm not really sure what I plan to do. I think I want to play Betsy a little bit. I think Betsy's kind of interesting. Obviously, I think the best Guardian right now is Victor. It's kind of hard to deny that because with KO and Dory being sort of the new faces of the meta once Stromae is gone, Victor is the Guardian that has the best time into them compared to Bravo and Betsy. But who knows? Maybe the meta turns out to be hyper aggressive and Katsu and Fi come back in stride. I find that unlikely. I think a lot of the quote unquote pro players in this game tend to prefer consistent, good numbers decks, and that's things like KO, Dorinthia, Victor, and Bravo is only really fine into Victor. So yeah, it's definitely going to be tough, but we'll see. I'll definitely put some work into adjusting the deck list to see, if we can get there versus KO better or Dorinthia. I don't really want to play some gross fatigue Bravo deck. I think that deck is bad, honestly. You just have a lot of auto lose matchups, and even some matchups you're just like, if my opponent, I just letting my opponent beat me or not beat me, and maybe that works on some levels. But I don't think Bravo's fatigue plan is sort of powerful enough on a base level to compete with a lot of the decks in the current format. So yeah, that's where I'm at currently. I'm probably gonna try to play a few games of Betsy. Maybe I'll upload some here or on Patreon. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll try some Hatchet Dorinthia. I was really interested in playing Hatchet Dorinthia before the PT because it was kind of novel. I like working on things. I like tinkering, especially from like a clean slate. But after the Pro Tour, there's like 10 bajillion Hatchet Dory decks you can look at now and like sort of mix and match and see what you like and see what people have gone through with testing. And so that kind of demotivates me a little bit to play Dory. But I do have a Marvel Dory, so maybe I will just play it because it's a cool deck. Like I don't find it too exciting to play per se, but it's a good numbers deck and you can't really go wrong with that. Brute, not super interested in playing right now. But once the Mistveil comes out, I'll definitely be giving, Zen a try. Maybe I'll try Enigma. Oh, that's one of the things too. It's like, do I join the dark side and become an illusionist player? I don't know. I don't want to play Prism because I don't know. Prism is like my arch nemesis almost in like my Fab career. When I first started playing the game, I was on Bravo, and as you may know, Oliver, my good friend from NorCal and testing partner, things like that, played Prism, and I would go, like 0-30 into him. Things have changed now. I can definitely beat his Prism deck, even the Iris one on Bravo, but not really interested in playing Prism. But Enigma does seem pretty cool, so maybe I'll give Enigma a try. But yeah, kind of just open-minded right now. We'll see what happens. Maybe I just bite the bullet and play Victor because he's still a Guardian, even though he's not really my preferred playstyle. But maybe there's like a more aggressive version of Victor that I can vibe with. So maybe I'll give that a try. And then, yeah, that's basically it from me. In terms of a question that I like to end videos with, the first question would be... Actually, no, just one question. Let's say a year from now, which headpiece do you think players will look back and think is stronger? Balance of Justice or Crown of Providence? I think a lot of players would say that, maybe Balance is a little skewed right now because Brute is in such high prevalence in the meta, and Crown of Providence is... The filtering effect from Crown of Providence is very powerful. But other players would say, there will always be aggressive decks that want to draw cards in this game, whether it's Art of War, whether it's Blood Rush Bellow, things like that, whether it's Tome. So maybe Balance becomes like the new standard headpiece and people may be bored in Crown, or maybe in the future, it's Crown is still the main headpiece for, non-specific decks like Ninja with Lynx, and Balance becomes a sideboard thing. So who knows? But yeah, that's my question. Which headpiece do you think goes down in history as the better of the two? Or is it just, depends on the meta, and they're both equally good? I personally don't have an answer because I haven't thought about it too much. I just thought I would ask the question. But yeah, that was all from me. Bit of a sad day to put last Bravo deck tech in the title, but that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I don't really want to post another one and be like, hey guys, brought this to the Pro Quest, got top 4 or whatever, and it's like the same, 78 cards. But if I have any other random changes, or like I'll do maybe tournament reports on Patreon. So if you want to keep seeing my Bravo content, you can be a member on there. For Bravo tourney reports and content, I'll probably just open it up to everybody. Like, you don't have to be a paid member, you can just join. So I can just write down and send a Fabry link instead of making a whole video on it. But yeah, that was all from me. Thanks for watching, guys. And unfortunately, couldn't bring Bravo to the promised land at the Pro Tour, but maybe in the future I can do that. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time.